All right, I don't know about you, but I cannot wait. I'll be waiting all day for Sunday Night Football. Miami Dolphins at the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm going to watch some games, but I'll be waiting all day for Sunday night. Dolphins, Eagles. Eagles favored by 2.5 against the most prolific offense in NFL history through 6 games. The Dolphins, crazy stats across the board for the Dolphins. But they've also lost a game. They lost a game where the Buffalo Bills pretty much shut that offense down in the second half. Can the Eagles do the same on Sunday Night Football?
It is kind of crazy. Like this offense looks absolutely unstoppable, except we've seen visible evidence of it being stopped and stopped fairly conclusively in their
for 30 minutes.
Yeah, in their biggest and most important game. It's like, well, those things don't make sense. Like they are so far ahead of everybody else. I mean, you know, the records that they're breaking in terms of pace through X weeks, you know, each week, they're overtaking the Greatest Show on Turf, which had an unreasonable, absurd production through the start of that season and for the whole season, but particularly the start. And like they're averaging 8 yards per play. That's insane. Like the number for everybody is normally between 5 and 6 somewhere. They're at 8.
The stat that's been going around is their number 2 in yards per play is the Niners at 6.
Yes.
So the difference between the Dolphins at number 1 and the Niners at number 2 is bigger than the difference between the Niners at number 2 and whoever's team 31 or 32.
Right.
So the Dolphins are that prolific in a yards per play, from a yards per play standpoint. Tyreek Hill specifically also looking to shatter records. Our yards per route run number that we've had, you know, PFF goes back to 2006. The record's like 3.6, 3.7 yards per route.
3.63.
3.63 is the record. Tyreek Hill is at 5.02. That's the number we were talking about with Marvin Mims early in the year on, 10 snaps a game.
And 3.63 is the record by a significant margin. I think the next highest is like 3.2 or something. So Steve Smith in 2008 had an absurd season where he averaged like 0.4 yards per route run, more than anybody else we've seen in the last 18 years. Tyreek Hill is on pace to beat that number by 1.4. The number that he is ahead of the record, which is clear of everybody else by 0.4, is the same yards per route run figure as Gabe Davis had last year. That's just how far ahead of the record pace he is this year. It's nuts.
It is nuts, man. I've said before on Tyreek Hill, I've made the statement, I think if he's on my team, I can make him whatever I want. If you want Tyreek Hill to be the best slot receiver in the NFL, catch 150 passes, he could do it. If you ask him to be the best deep threat, he can do it. And that's what Miami's asking him to do, to be a vertical threat. He's averaging over 19 yards per catch. And, that's what Miami has chosen. Look, I would choose that too. I'd probably choose the deep threat thing, but I'm saying that his skill set truly is unique in that he's got the quickness to win in the slot, the speed to win down the field, and Miami's also, doing all the trickeration and the motion and the things to kind of get those little extra cheat codes in there, and that's why they've been so tough to stop right now.
I was just checking what he's on pace for in terms of yardage over the season, because remember, Megatron still owns the single season.
2,500 or something?
Megatron has the single season record at 1,964 yards.
16
and for the last few years, these guys with the extra game have been trying to hit that 2,000-yard barrier. And for the first few games this season, Tyreek Hill was on pace. Justin Jefferson was on pace. Jefferson goes down. Tyreek Hill is on pace for 306 yards. So he's on pace
over
to break
2,300?
Over 2,300, and the record is 1,964.
Yeah. So it's crazy, man. I think my take...
Remember, he's like left games with injuries or cramp, like IV things. He's not played every snap he could play, and he's still on pace to shatter the records.
So I think my take on this game, did Buffalo shut Miami down? Did we go back and look at the film and say, hey, what did they do? They were, they added a little bit of physicality. I think this is more of a hope than a strategy, but they took away Tua's first read pretty often in that game, Buffalo. That's like saying, that's not a strategy. That's like saying, hey, get pressure with your front four. That's an execution thing, but Buffalo executed it extremely well. I do think Buffalo's familiarity with Miami helped in that sense. Is there going to be what you used to always say about Jamar Chase? Hey, when somebody first sees Jamar Chase, they don't realize how fast he is. They don't realize the speed he plays at. Is that going to be an issue when you get to this AFC-NFC battle here with the Eagles? The Eagles haven't seen this level of speed from Miami, I think that's going to, maybe be a little jarring right away.
Yeah, I think it's a slightly different problem with them. I think the issue you have dealing with Miami's speed is that you can't rewire your brain for that speed in a game, right? Like when you come up against somebody that is like that much faster than everybody else you're dealing with on a regular basis, it changes it changes the physics that your brain has been accustomed to in the last like 20 years, right? Like everything you do. You ever play soccer where the field is wet and the ball bounces differently? Because when it hits the ground, it accelerates, right? And when you're not used to that and you then play on a wet field, you spend like an hour getting used to the fact that the ball is going to bounce differently than the way your brain is used to it bouncing. And you never, like, it takes so long to rewire that because you're so used to a certain physics, right? Physics is a constant. It stays the same. Your brain is used to it. It understands how the world works, how things bounce, all that kind of stuff. And then when you change that, you can't just readjust immediately, right? Your brain takes a while to rewire itself. So when you're dealing with a guy that's just at a different speed to everybody else you've ever come across, you can't fix that in a play. It takes you maybe the whole game. It takes you maybe longer than that. So you spend the entire game just chasing shadows because you're moving to the wrong place. You're not taking the right angle. You can't deal with it. I think that's what happens. It's not that they're surprised by it. It's that you simply cannot rewire your mind fast enough to the speed you're dealing with now.
Were you asking me specifically if I've played in those soccer games?
I think I started the question asking you generally, and then in my mind it went rhetorical once I realized who I was talking to.
I have 7 years of soccer playing under my belt.
Really?
Yeah.
At what level?
Between the ages of 5 and 12.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
7 years, though, of soccer.
Yeah.
Pretty good. I mean, I wasn't good.
So you know.
Yeah, but I was going to say yes. Played on a wet field, I remember.
There you go.
My 7-year-old year, we had a sloppy game, real wet. Completely, yeah, remember that. Here's a little nugget, with my weather, home road thing. I mean, it's going to be fine in Philadelphia. 50s and maybe a little wind, right? The two games, so I'm just looking for how do you slow down this Dolphins offense. At home, they have been ridiculous, right? But the two games they've played on the road and outdoors, I'm not considering Los Angeles outdoors. I know there's a little opening in the roof. It's a dome, right? So they put 36 up in the dome against the Chargers, 70 in Miami, 31 in Miami, 42 in Miami. But the two games they played outdoors in the Northeast, 24 points against the Patriots and 20 points against the Bills. Just wondering if that's a little bit of a factor here, right? It is. We know it's easier to play on the the quick turf and the nice weather and everything. It's not going to be raining or it's not going to be snowy or anything, but I wonder if that's going to be a factor for the Eagles. A little less explosive in this game.
What exactly is it about the elements outside that is potentially taking like 50% off this offense?
I'm just pointing out how they've played outdoors in the Northeast so far. And, there's always, I think the wind factor, things are a little bit different. Ball carries differently. Tua threw a duck in New England that got picked off, right? You just have a few of those throws that aren't as clean in conditions.
You don't want to get the Tua people on your back.
I don't.
You're trying to say that Tua's noodle is exposed in the wind?
I didn't say that.
Sounded like that's what you were saying.
I'm saying things are a little bit different. The other thing, people are asking me about the Eagles. Asking me about the Eagles offense this year. I can't put my finger on it, but it feels different, right?
It has
feels
been.
slow.
I mean, it's not been firing on all cylinders. By the way, Lane Johnson being potentially out is a huge factor. Like Jack Driscoll, it's not like he hasn't played there before, and he, I guess, he's better than replacement level. He is, however, a significant step down from Lane Johnson to the point where it can definitely be problematic against good players.
I think the Eagles, remember they had that 19-play, 97-yard drive the other day against the Jets. I'm sure they want to play that game against Miami, and I think they'll be able to, right? Just run the ball, grind it out. Do you think there's an element of the tush-push deal where they stop to play rugby in short yardage? Do you think that's kind of hurting some of their explosiveness? Because when they want to, like when they have to play from behind, the Eagles, and play catch-up, they throw the ball down the field to A.J. Brown, and he's an explosive player. Is there an element where they're too slow they're slowing down the game too much and losing some of the explosiveness that maybe they had last year. Because they used to blow teams out last year.
Yeah.
And it feels like they're doing just enough to keep teams around. And then last week you have a terrible decision by Jalen Hurts, and all of a sudden you lose. Or am I oversimplifying this and how the Eagles are playing?
No, I think because they're only breaking that out, on short yardage to keep the drive going. So I don't really see that it changes much. People have asked, is it changing the way they call the games, knowing that they have basically the extra down when they need it? But again, it's only when it's like and one, right? They're not doing that. It's not like this is 4-down territory, so if you leave 4th and 3, it's cool because we're going for it anyway.
But it is an interesting one, right? So when we've criticized offensive coordinators before, it's when they're on 1st and 10, it's like, I just got to get to 2nd and 5. And they just care about getting to 2nd and 5. And they forget the fact that you're allowed to pick up a first down on 1st and 10. You're allowed to, right? You can run a play action and hit a 14-yard curl and pick up a first down. You don't have to get to 2nd and manageable. But is there that element on 3rd down? It's 3rd and 5, and it's like, I'm not going to try to pick up this first down. I know I'm going for it. Let's just get 3 or 4, and then we'll go for it. I wonder if there's something to that it's actually working against you a little bit, knowing that you're going to go for it on 4th down, and you're probably going to get it. And you're 3rd and 5, you have a lower chance of converting, but you have a better chance of a big play. You can still hit A.J. Brown for 20. Like, you're allowed to pick up 20 on 3rd and 5. Again, might be oversimplifying, but it's what you feel. It's what I feel with the Eagles, that there's some big play opportunities maybe that they're not leaning into here.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like they don't necessarily go to the A.J. Brown well often enough. Like when it feels like when they're backed into a corner, it's like, oh, let's just fling one at A.J. Brown. And then lo and behold, he's uncoverable and you make a big play. It's like, maybe use that more often. Like,
yeah,
we don't, there doesn't need, it's kind of like the Randy ratio thing. It's like, there's not like a limit on how often we can go to this unstoppable playmaker. Like, let's just start feeding him the ball. Like, we've seen elite receivers in the past get 20, 25 targets in a game. We don't have to not do that just because it is excessive. Like, if they're not stopping it, keep going. So if they're not going to stop A.J. Brown, keep throwing him the damn ball. We had a couple of emails, actually, recently about the tush-push thing. One guy was asking, why can't the defense basically do the same? Like, multiple guys and push them back and just create this mess.
Yeah.
They're not allowed. You can't push from behind as a defense. So it's an unbalanced rule in terms of you're only allowed to push from the offensive side. You're not allowed to do it from the defensive side, which is why a lot of people have been saying, this is an unstoppable play, because literally it's unbalanced in terms of the rules. And then somebody else was saying, you talk about it being a rugby play, and whilst it isn't a scrum, it's not really a maul either because of the way it works. What it's actually like is there's a play in rugby where from a few yards out, you take a quick tap and a guy like binds onto the side of you and they try and like run over one guy essentially. Now the real difference between that and this is rugby can stop those plays because the guy with the ball is the first line, right? Yeah. So you can just chop him down. And they made the point in the email, I'm sorry for forgetting the guy's name, I wasn't planning on talking about it, but he's like, you chop this guy's legs and you stop the play. Now you can't do that with the tush push because there's a line of offensive linemen in front of Jalen Hurts.
Right.
So you can't get at his legs to chop him down and end the play at source. And that's the real problem with this play and why it is so difficult to stop if you execute it well like the Eagles do.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. Like there's just a little something missing from the Eagles' offense. It's not just the short yardage stuff, but I know they have the big play potential. And look, I think there's two ways this game goes, right? I think the Eagles either slow it down, Miami gets limited possessions, and both teams maybe score in the 20s. But if it gets into a shootout, I think the Eagles are able to hang with it too. I think it's going to be an awesome game, either way. And of course, you have the Alabama QB. Jalen Hurts, Tua took over for Hurts. I mean, there's so many great storylines here. Super impressed with how much Jalen Hurts has improved since getting benched for Tua. I mean, Tua looked way better than Jalen Hurts in college, and now they are comparable quarterbacks in the NFL. Comparable, Dolphins fans, right? We can speak about them in the same conversation. That is allowed.
That's going to make them mad.
Why did they get so mad?
They're demented. I tweeted
I mean, they were mad when Tua didn't have good stats.
Yeah.
When he was averaging 6 yards per attempt, they were like, no, he's a god. So, here they are.
I tweeted just a video of a Justin Herbert throw and did not reference Miami, Tua, anything whatsoever. And I was just besieged by Tua fans just ranting. It's like it's unhinged behavior.
Hey, it's funny. And Tua's playing awesome. He is playing great. And if we go back, look, man, we had Tua over Justin Herbert in our QB rankings as a group. I think we had them all in the first round. Joe Burrow, then Tua, then Justin Herbert. And this is, you could debate last year when Tua was out there, but this is clearly the first time where Tua is clearly playing better than Justin Herbert at this point in their career, and which is, again, makes the whole QB evaluation thing fascinating, right? I think even Tua fans can probably admit Joe Burrow's been the best quarterback from, the totality of their careers. But Tua's playing the best out of all of them right now.
I don't know if they would.
I don't think they would either. Where are you going with this game, man? I've got conflicting vibes here, man. I got confliction.
I'm going Miami.
Yeah. My first instinct was Miami and the shock factor.
I know I've seen it happen, but I still can't even imagine this offense being stopped.
Yeah. I mean, we had the same take. We thought Miami was getting hosed when they were underdogs against Buffalo. But I think Vegas has Philly by 2.5 because Philly's a good team, and it's outdoors in the Northeast-ish.
Northeast-ish.
Yeah. Outdoors in the Mid-Atlantic.
It's mid-October.
It's not
outdoors.
New England or Buffalo, but it's Philly, right?
Yeah. It's mid-October, outdoors in the Northeast-ish.
I know they put up 27 or whatever in Buffalo in the snow last year. I know, but
it's going to be a mid-50s game. I mean, that's rough.
Just saying. Get some wins there.